So we started working with NGRX, and at this point, before we continue and we move more of the functionality we have in our application into the NGRX world, I want to sum up what we did thus far. And it's really important to follow along here so that it becomes clear which strengths and weaknesses NGRX has and why you might want to use it or might not want to use it. So we added NGRX to our application by including the store module and calling forRoot. forRoot then needs a map, so basically an object, that tells NGRX which reducers we have in our application, because all these reducers and the state they generate make up the store of this application, make up the NGRX store. Now we add a feature for that with an identifier of our choice, and then the reducer for that feature. Now that reducer, as you learned here, is just a function. And now the important thing about that reducer function is that NGRX will automatically pass in the current state and an action it received. So it will execute this function whenever a new action is received, and then this function executes and gets both the current state and the action that was received. In the reducer, I then use a switch case statement, and this is a typical setup you see in the Redux and NGRX world, where we check the type of action we got, because action is actually a JavaScript object with a type property. And depending on the type which we have, we return a new state. And that is how a reducer function always works. Data in, data out. No asynchronous code. It's all synchronous. So we only have synchronous code in here, and we always return a new object which will be used to replace the old state for this part of the application. So for the shopping list here. And this return state is what NGRX will in the end register for this shopping list slice of the overall app state of the app store it manages here. So this is what we added. We added this reducer, and regarding the actions, we also added an actions file where we, for one, defined unique identifiers for all our actions. These are simply strings that identify each action. And then the action itself is not just this identifier, but it's a complete object based on classes we define in here. Each action needs to have a type property where we do store the string identifier for the action. But in addition, we might also have a payload, so a property which can be set to attach data to that action. And we needed that, for example, for adding an ingredient, though we also have an action, the delete action, which has no extra data because it doesn't need any. Now, this entire setup was really a lot of work. We have to be honest there. Adding the reducer, adding the actions, injecting the store, dispatching actions, that is a lot of overhead work. And using the normal shopping list service definitely was easier there. And therefore, using a service with subjects is a more than fine alternative to using NGRX. However, once you've gone through that first initial setup and you got NGRX going, you saw that it's pretty easy to add new actions, new state slices, and therefore it's really easy to grow our state and to manage everything in our app, or thus far in this app, in a part of our app, with NGRX. So it's mainly that initial setup that requires a lot of work. Once that is set up, it's actually quite fast to work with NGRX. Nonetheless, it's of course always up to you whether you want to add NGRX or whether you say, well, in this application, I'm fine with subjects and normal services. And as I mentioned multiple times, that would be fine. Now here, we're now managing everything for the shopping list with the help of NGRX though. And therefore, we can really get rid of our shopping list service here. So let's remove that shopping list service file. And hence, in the core module, get rid of the shopping list service we provide and of the import here. And now we got a couple of other places in the application as well, where I still injected the shopping list service, like here in the shopping list component. And we have to remove that as well as the import reference from all these places to avoid errors in our application. So also here in the shopping edit component, also remove the import, and also in the recipe service. There, I also injected the shopping list service. Well, it has to be removed from there as well. with all that removed, it compiles fine, and our application should also work just fine as it did before, now entirely powered by NGRX for that shopping list. So the rest of the application still uses services and will of course continue there as well and add NGRX in the other parts as well.